This is the Moto Guzzi V7 Sport. Yes, a Guzzi. I mean, just look at those jugs. It felt like a good time to bring some character, some charm, and a little bit of swanky Italian style to the channel, and I think the V7 is the perfect tool for the job. I mean, come on, even I was getting a little bit bored of middleweight sport bikes. I'm gonna get this bike out on the road today for a ride and review, then we're gonna come back in the studio for a comprehensive breakdown before I render my final verdict at the end. I purchased this bike with the help of my friends at the Piaggio Group and AF1 here in Austin, and I'm going to be giving it away to one lucky member in the audience. Go to my website, yammynoob.co, or hit the link in the description to learn how you can get entered to win. Check out AF1's inventory in the link down below while you're there, and see if a Guzzi is right for you. Now let's swing a leg and go for a ride.
Okay, Moto Guzzi V7 Sport. This is a really interesting model. Recently updated, lots of changes, but still quite an authentic, old school, and for lack of a better word, charming thing, right? The big flying V, the shaft drive, this gorgeous Verde Legnano. What a nice paint scheme on this thing. You got the Guzzi badge right here, Mandela del Ladio from 1921, and that's a pretty authentic claim to fame. These things are still made on the banks of Lake Como in Italy, and honestly, how I view Moto Guzzi is kind of like, for lack of a better term, if you use a bit of an outdated term, it is truly the hipster of motorcycles. Harley guys that want something, more interesting. It's for Triumph guys who can't stand just another black T120. I mean, it's for BMW guys who want the side-to-side shake but can't stand being a BMW guy. Moto Guzzi's your brand, man. This bike's really cool. All right, flicking the key, swinging a leg. I'm about 5'11" with a 32-inch inseam. You guys can see me here on the 360 camera. It's a pretty approachable bike. I've got a pretty stout bend in my legs. It is a pretty short seat height here. I think a little under 30 inches, 29.9 if I remember correctly. Very agreeable stance. But it is a dense motorcycle. You can feel that. Lots of heft to it, but honestly, it kind of fits the vibe. One funny Easter egg about this bike is nothing is lined up in the center. When I bought this bike, it was the first thing I noticed. I was like, why is the gas cap not aligned with this and not aligned with that? It's all a little off kilter, if you guys can see that. Bothers me a little bit as someone who's a little OCD/anal retentive. Let's get this right over here. Let's start her up, shall we? We're gonna see a classic little shake and shimmy. This bike just puts a smile on my face, man. It really does. It's just charming, for lack of a better word. Just very charming. So, 853cc transverse V. Okay, that's a nice little mill right here. Let's get a sound clip. It's a big, throaty engine. It feels like the real deal, Pulling in the clutch, stepping down into first. Gearbox is a little slushy. As you pull away with this motorcycle, you just immediately understand the vibe, man. You understand that, yes, it has sport in the name. Yes, they've done a few things to lively the motorcycle up a little bit, but it's just such a charming and interesting ride. The Guzzi kind of feels like a motorcycle that evolved in a sort of alternate dimension where bikes were never designed to be fully sport bikes or fully touring bikes, and yet they made it all the way to the modern era with just enough to make them compliant for street use. So we do have twin disc brakes. We do have a nice amount of power here, about 67 horsepower and 59 foot-pounds of torque. But really, if any bike was ever greater than the sum of its parts, it is the Moto Guzzi, because you look at the specs on paper, you think about what this bike is, and you're like, okay, it's just, yet another retro, charming, roadster that is trying to ape some sales off of Triumph and BMW and Harley, right? But there's something really interesting happening here. This isn't my first time riding a Moto Guzzi. I've ridden two different ones before, but I think this sport really is one of the most successful packages I've ridden. There's several factors at play here. Number one, this is an air-cooled engine. The architecture's pretty old. And so firing up this bike and getting it down the road, it genuinely feels like an old school, authentic feeling. This bike doesn't really feel all that modern, but it's kind of a good thing. You lay on the power a little bit, really nice sense of power from this 853cc motor. You just want to take your time with it. You know, if ever there's a bike you wanted to just kind of cruise your backcountry roads, take a look at the scenery, it is the Moto Guzzi V7 Sport. Just a lovely place to sit. So it's got that old burbly air-cooled engine. It's a shaft drive motor, so it's virtually maintenance free, and it does that shaft jacking thing, and it's amplified even more because of the engine layout. So when you get on the throttle, there's so many unique sensations from this motorcycle that you just don't get on basically any other bike. Like, yes, the Triumph Bonneville is probably a little bit more sophisticated, nicer to ride, a little bit more, you know, put together. But as I bend the Guzzi through this corner here, I feel the shaft jacking, I feel the engine side to side. You know, you gotta really take that with a grain of salt and understand that that's what this motorcycle is trying to do. It's trying to elicit a unique feeling for the rider, and I gotta say, it really does. You know, every time you grab down a gear, you feel that shove side to side, and then you throw the bike into the corner, and the front end doesn't really compress. It doesn't do what you think it's gonna do, and at first it's a bit jarring. I remember the first couple of times I rode this bike, I thought, oh man, it's not really, you know, giving me a confidence inspiring feeling. But you know, it's not really designed to be a corner carving bike. It's not designed to, you know, like have that extreme precision. What it is trying to do is just do something a little different, right? And I think it does so better than almost anything else I've ridden in quite some time. I've ridden the BMW Retro Scrambler Roadster thing, the R9T, and it's just too polished. It's too polished, and the Boxer motor doesn't have a great sound to it. This thing, it's a V-twin. It's a 90-degree V-twin. It's just pointing the opposite direction, and it just sounds great. It's got a really nice spread of torque. The feeling of it is actually super similar to the Triumph's Bonneville engine. You know, just that velvety, smooth, low-down torque. You know, it actually kind of sounds a bit similar too. If you just go, just that nice surge. That's telling me to gear shift. Yeah, that's one thing. You do want mechanical sympathy for the Guzzi. You don't really want to go bonsai with it and rev it all the way out to redline. I don't think I've even gotten this thing out to redline because quite simply it just doesn't really want to do that. So yeah, it's a bike that's, you know, it's grown up and changed over many, many years, but only just enough to kind of keep up with the modern era. There's very few bikes on sale today that feel like this motorcycle does. This, to me, is what Harley should have done with the Sportster. Instead of turning it into some liquid-cooled, polished, weird, big, fat front tire-looking bike, they should have done something like this, where you get that sense of, you know, air-cooled, rumbly, cool nature of a bike, but it has a lot of, you know, actual geometry and design chops, and you know, it feels like, I don't know, man, it's hard to explain. It's really hard to explain how a Guzzi feels. It's authentic and charming and air-cooled, and yet it still is like a real modern motorcycle. It's like a perfect blend between the two. Triumph's products became a little too polished, in my opinion. They're great, they're really nice to ride, but I think this Guzzi just gives you a little bit more intrigue. So one of the standout features, of course, is that shaft drive. It's very unique, it's maintenance free, but the other standout feature to me is this gas tank. Now you might say, well, what's up with the gas tank? Yeah, why is that a big feature? Other than it being awesome and green, it's 5.5 gallons. That is almost comically large for this style of motorcycle and this weight. To give you context, that means you can do 250 miles of range with this fun little roadster bike. And you're like, wait a minute, I got shaft drive, which is maintenance free, I got 250 miles of range, I got a lovely torquey engine, and even better than all that, you actually have cruise control on this machine. Yes, if you can believe it, this machine does come with an ultra simple, very stealth cruise control module that is almost like an Easter egg feature of this motorcycle. So all you have to do to activate cruise control is actually hold down this quick select mode button here. You'll see that the cruise control module pops up there. You tap the button again as you're on the gas, and then you're in cruise control mode. To turn it off, you just hit the brakes or hit the clutch, and you actually deactivate the cruise control. There is no anti-roll-off throttle like on most cruise control systems on bikes, and there is no res and set. It's a very simple system, but it really fits the vibe of this bike, and that's a really nice feature to add to a bike that didn't really need to have that, because this now has ride-by-wire, it has more advanced electronics, a couple different mode selectors, an IMU, lean-sensitive TC and ABS, and so I think it's so cool that they included all of these much more high-end features on a bike that still feels this authentic and interesting to ride. Super cool. So you have a bike that's flexible, practical, interesting, beautiful, and again, that's why I say it's a bit of like a well-kept secret in motorcycling, or almost like a hipster bike, because you gotta really know about a Guzzi to get a Guzzi. Every person I've met that has a Guzzi or really likes this brand is an absolute like dyed-in-the-wool, real deal motorcyclist. And I don't mean to gatekeep, but they're guys that have been riding for 20 years, they've ridden everything, and they've arrived to this, and they say, wow, this is what I've been looking for, you know? And I completely understand. If I was in the market for something retro, I wanted something that had the old school authentic feel, this would be right at the top of my list. And then as a massive added bonus, it is super easy to maintain and ride. It's, you know, a very known engine platform. It's a simple 2-valve air-cooled engine. It's probably not going to break. You have cruise control. You have just enough tech to keep you safe, which is great. A fantastically large gas tank. I mean, there's a lot to like here. There's a lot to like here. It's really, really a sweet ride. One tiny point that I do have to contend with, you know, this motorcycle retails for over $10,000. It is part of the Piaggio family of motorcycles, but there are a couple things that in the cockpit take me out of the feelings that I'm getting of like, oh, like this is such a great bike. I'll give you a couple examples. The switch clusters are directly lifted from other Piaggio products. So this is actually an Aprilia starter over here. This is shared with other higher end models, and this kind of just like doesn't really fit the vibe of the bike. It's a little too modern and angular. And then the screen, you guys know I'm very picky about screens. I don't mean to be. I'm not an overgrown iPad kid. I don't want a TFT display on this bike, absolutely not, but I do wish it had a real sweeping analog, either tachometer, speedometer, or both. I really think that if they had included something kind of like what Kawasaki does on the Z900 RS, where you have two round gauges, speedo and tach, and in the middle you could access some of these features, I think that would have been absolutely perfect on this machine. I would have loved two twin clocks right here, a screen in the middle. Would have been so cool. Would have made this bike nearly perfect for me. And just one note about this color, it's a little polarizing. Some people think it looks like pea soup green. I think it's a cool color and a heritage color at that. And honestly, more bikes should come in interesting colors. I'm so tired of seeing motorcycles just coming in black, white, or gray. This is a great color. More bikes should absolutely come in cool colors like this. Oh, listen to that. You blip it down, it shakes a little. You gotta ride it the Guzzi way. The one thing I will tell you about this motorcycle is you gotta take your time with it. This isn't a bike that rewards or even accepts kind of bad or weird inputs. Everything's gotta be buttery smooth on this Guzzi, otherwise it just ends up really kind of getting angry on you. It doesn't like it when you know, stab the gas or flick it over really quickly. Everything's got to be smooth. The gearbox you got to take a little bit of time with, because it's a little squishy, it's a little sloppy, much more than I would have expected. All right, let's give her a little bit, huh? I would say the Guzzi has ample power. It has sufficient power. I don't feel, it's not a slow motorcycle, and I think for spending over $10,000, it feels appropriately fast and torquey for its segment. It certainly feels much more grown up and serious than something like a Royal Enfield Interceptor, and that's fair. It's about $5,000 more expensive, I believe, so you kind of want something that feels more substantial. It fits right in line with the 900 series from Triumph or the Ducati Scramblers, you know, 803cc Desmo engine. It's right in line with that kind of torque and power. It feels perfectly in line with the segment. There's one more note about the ergonomics of this machine. I do wish the foot pegs were a little further back. And I know you guys are going to say, oh, this guy's just a sport bike freak. He just wants his foot pegs further back. No, but I feel like I'd want them just perfectly centered underneath me. I think the Ducati Scrambler and the Triumph Bonnevilles have superior ergonomic fit over this machine. This is a little too chair-like for me. I find that I'm just seated in kind of a sort of strange position. I'd prefer if I was just a little bit more like this, if you guys can see on the 360. Just the foot pegs maybe just 2-3 inches back would feel a little more comfortable. This is sort of that classic mid-mounted Evo Sportster vibe, but a little bit more cantilevered forward. But you know, it's possible you can get different rear sets and adjust the fit a little bit. But man, the seat's comfortable, you got range. This is a bike you fall in love with, man. This is a bike you buy, you keep for like 10 years, and you just really fall in love with. I don't know why. The Guzzi feels so romantic, doesn't it? With its big gas tank and its ability to go big miles. You just want to have an old school adventure with it. It's very romantic. I'm very into this motorcycle. I think it's very cool. Right, all that being said, let's jump over to the shop and get a closer look at the Guzzi.
Moto Guzzi has never been a motorcycle brand for riders comparing the girth of their spec sheets with their buddies. Guzzi doesn't build bikes for clout chasers or highway flex offenders on Instagram. They're not trying to convince you that the future of motorcycling lives behind the glow of a 12-inch TFT dash, especially when everyone I've talked to says 4.5 inches is completely satisfactory. Moto Guzzi exists in an entirely different lane, one that they almost exclusively occupy. They operate on mechanical honesty, engineering stubbornness, and an undying romantic affectation for old world design. The V7 Sport leads me to believe that isn't changing anytime soon. Longitudinal V-twin, shaft drive, raw mechanical purity, their core philosophy is all right here in this motorcycle. This is a bike for riders who don't just want something that looks retro, but something that is retro while still being competent enough to survive in the modern world. This isn't a Janus 250, if you get what I'm trying to say. It's not trying to recreate the past with a rickety frame and a dumpy engine. It's a modern interpretation of the past that is confusingly raw and refined at the same time. At the heart of the V7 is Moto Guzzi's air-cooled 853cc transverse V-twin. The cylinders stick out sideways from the frame, unapologetically exposed, a layout that remains functionally eccentric in 2025. This unit puts out roughly 67 horsepower and 58 foot-pounds of torque. In a modern context, those numbers are certainly modest, but if you're comparing power figures on this bike, you're missing the point entirely. The engine delivers immediate low-down torque and just pulls smoothly through the rev range. It sounds great too, with a low, velvety, almost luscious exhaust note. No dead spots or bad fueling here. You feel the character of this engine before you even have a chance to analyze it. It gently rocks at idle, thumping away like a musical instrument. The torque arrives early and stays present and encouraging. Its mechanical peculiarities are transmitted through the entire chassis. The shaft drive, the engine, just gives you all kinds of strange feelings. It's not hopped up or frenetic like a rabid dog chewing through its chain to chase the nearest toddler. It's more like an endearing little bulldog that snorts when you scratch its belly. That engine is paired with a 6-speed gearbox and crucially a shaft drive. In an era where chains are the unquestioned default and shaft-driven bikes are mostly reserved for flagship BMWs or long-distance tourers, Guzzi's continued use of a shaft drive feels very intentional. It's not lighter, it doesn't transmit more power, but it's simple, durable, and perfectly suited to the orientation of the output shaft on the transverse engine, which is probably why they made it that way. The V7 Sport is designed to be more dynamic than the other V7 models without abandoning the platform's inherent personality. It uses a steel cradle frame, which it's far from high-tech. It provides a solid and predictable foundation for this type of motorcycle. Thanks to the up-spec suspension and brakes, the V7 Sport is noticeably more focused and responsive than its siblings. Up front, Moto Guzzi fits a 41mm inverted fork with preload adjustability. Now look, it's not electronically controlled, fully adjustable wizardry, but it fits the bill nicely for this bike. The inverted fork adds rigidity and improves front-end feel under braking and cornering. That's not going to turn the V7 into a track weapon, but it does meaningfully increase precision on the street. Out back, the familiar twin shock layout remains, preserving that classic European roadster silhouette. One of the strongest technical statements on this bike comes from the braking department. The V7 Sport is equipped with dual 320mm discs and Brembo monoblock calipers. That's some serious braking hardware, resulting in pretty good brake feel and strong, predictable stopping power. The V7 Sport isn't a wild performance machine, but the braking ability complements the bike's heft, which is important. The Sport also receives 6-spoke alloy wheels that are lighter than those on the V7 Stone, and with less unsprung weight, turn-in feels quicker and the bike is way more eager to change direction. The tech additions on the Sport version show that Moto Guzzi isn't opposed to modernization, it just chose to modernize where it really matters. You don't get a 6-axis IMU or a giant TFT screen, which quite frankly would feel out of place on this machine, but you do get ride modes, TC, ABS, and even cruise control. It's equipped well enough to feel modern without feeling superfluous or overreaching. Stylistically, the V7 Sport leans into restraint. The proportions are clean, the tank is sculpted in a way that looks distinctly Guzzi. It's sparse but intentional with plenty of visual interest. There's no fake vents, aggressive angles, or dorky retro cosplay. This is a classic design born from a century of motorcycle building, not fleeting industry trends. Many retro bikes nowadays borrow visual cues from the past while hiding thoroughly modern platforms underneath. The V7 avoids that trap because its engineering and aesthetics are inseparable. It looks the way it does because of how it rides, and it rides the way it does because of how it looks. It's not a modern naked bike with a round headlight that everyone agreed collectively to call neo-retro. The V7 Sport isn't a quirky hipster dog whistle. It doesn't rely on gimmicks or derivative aesthetics. It's true to its origin, with a design that predates ironic old-school bike fetishism entirely. I'm looking at you, Trident 800 and Suzuki GSX Double T. The V7 Sport stands as a distinct alternative in the modern retro landscape. Where some competitors polish nostalgia into a lifestyle product, Moto Guzzi preserves mechanical authenticity. The engine, shaft drive, the frame, it's all real, intentional, and cohesive. The result is a deeply satisfying riding experience. It's a bike you could often ride without feeling bored or understimulated. Ergonomics are neutral, seat height is approachable, power delivery is forgiving without being dull. It's not trying to convince you of anything. The V7 Sport is like a noise rock band. It just does its own thing, and either you get it or you don't. I wasn't quite sure what to expect from the Moto Guzzi before I rode it. Would it be an old school bike desperately trying to cling onto relevance with some updated tech and features, smoothed over by time like a BMW Boxer Twin product? Or maybe it would be like a Triumph Bonneville, velvety smooth, burbling along, but extremely polite. It's rare that you get a thoroughly unique experience in motorcycling, but the Guzzi provides that in spades. It has a completely singular identity that isn't shared with anything else in motorcycling. This bike has a strange combination of features that imply a pretty specific style of riding. The disproportionately large gas tank, the shaft drive, the delivery of torque, the secret cruise control on offer. Is this actually a secret stylish touring motorcycle for those of us who can't stomach something with full fairings, humongous saddlebags, and a Garmin GPS unit? Maybe the Guzzi really is the most charming of all modern retro motorcycles. The V7 delivers emotion, it delivers feeling. Yes, it does that signature shake and rattle. Yes, it sometimes fires up in a rather, let's say, less than confidence-inspiring way, but it authentically remains true to what motorcycling is meant to be. It hasn't been polished to the nth degree. It feels like something that evolved in some sort of alternate dimension of motorcycling. This bike is what so many in the modern retro category wishes they could be. And the green paint job certainly doesn't hurt either. This bike to me is what Harley-Davidson should be making, something that harkens back to a more unpolished time with just enough refinement that it's modern and rideable. In many ways, the spiritual brother to the Guzzi is a Royal Enfield Interceptor 650, but in this regard, we have to give it to the Guzzi. The 850 V-twin feels, as cheesy as it sounds, masculine. Moto Guzzis have a hard rock vibe about them, less glam metal and more AC/DC. It has a real heft and thump to how it rides down the road, and it requires a bit more focus to ride as the longitudinal twin and the shaft drive create forces that may be a bit alien to a rider unfamiliar with the Guzzi doctrine. More than any other ride, Guzzis have a tendency to create some absolute die-hard fans, and I can see why. The more I ride this motorcycle, the more intrigued by it I am. I can completely understand why somebody would slowly but surely fall in love with the vibe, a nice slow burn, because you really cannot find this feeling anywhere else in modern motorcycling. Not only is it becoming rarer and rarer to find air-cooled bikes, but large rumbly ones with questionable design decisions that only Italians would make based solely on love and aesthetics, the Guzzi is truly in a lane of its own. The V7 Sport has some welcome additions that provide more confidence to the ride rather than true sporting intentions. I don't think anybody's going to buy this bike in the hopes it's going to rail through twisty roads, at least I certainly hope not. You buy it because it simply evokes an emotion inside of you, and that's always reason enough to buy a motorcycle. We're going to rate this bike a solid 8 out of 10. It's unique, it's interesting, it's green, and it's exactly the sort of bike we need more of in the industry. Downsides? Well, the cruise control is a bit odd to operate, but I am glad it's there. The weight is a little too much in my view, and the gearbox is a bit vague to operate. The handling is charmingly unique and requires a little bit of discipline and focus to ride, but it's something you can figure out in, 30 to 45 minutes of riding it. I'm excited to keep rolling on this Guzzi for the next few weeks, and I hope you head over to our website, yammydo.co, and learn how you can enter to win. Thanks for watching the show today. We appreciate it. Big shout out to AF1 and the Piaggio group for facilitating this giveaway bike. And we will catch you guys on the next one. See you later.